Hello, everybody. Season 2, episode 8. It's the end of a season, which was a
So
bit of a
sad.
yeah. Okay, I'm just gonna say what I think off the bat because obviously everyone's got strong opinions. If this wasn't the final episode of the season, I think it would be really fucking good, and I think it does better on the rewatch. But now I've just got blue balls for 2 years, so that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, I'm.
Yeah, I agree with what you said. Like, it felt better on the rewatch, and I want to hear Max's opinion.
I was gonna say that it does. It feels like if this was not the finale, if this was episode 8 of a
Hmm.
10 episode season, I would be like, okay, it's a mediocre episode. It's filler getting me to the next week.
Hmm.
But as a season finale, and the fact that we're gonna have to wait a year and a half to 2 years. It's terrible. It's
Terrible.
just not good. And I did not think it held up on the rewatch. It got any better on the rewatch. I disagree on that
So I have a
Oh.
point. So I
dissenting
want to hear
opinion.
what you what why you thought that, or
So
we
my
picked up
my
the
my,
second time.
my dissenting opinion is this again. I did when I initially watched it. Again, had a feeling of like I all the way through. I was like, when are they going to get to it? When are they going to get to it? And had more build
Mm.
up and more build up. My dissenting opinion is because we again the long gaps between seasons sucks.
Mm.
But if you think about an episode like the last episode of Game of Thrones back in the day, they
Yeah.
would have these massive build-up episodes so that people would tune back in for the next season. Like you had these like the season where you have all of the build-up with Danny, and then like the end of the episode said getting on a boat to finally come to Westeros. Like there is those like it's meant to be like a final like end of season cliffhanger. Is they're finally
Mm.
going into battle? What will it be? But I do also get the blue balls and the fact that like last season felt like this season's going to be the battle season.
Yeah.
Then this season
Yeah.
ended with this season's going to feel like a battle season. But equally, like my brain, like my justification is that Game of Thrones would have those episodes where at the end of the season, it would just build up a load so people would tune in next year.
Yeah.
With
I.
Um,
those Game of Thrones seasons though, it's a 10
yeah,
episode season, and episode 9 was always bananas.
Mm.
yeah,
Episode 9 was always the like this where the shit hits the fan episode. This season did not have that. It had like moments that were great like that, like Rook's Rest and the Red
Mm.
Sewing, but it did not have like an episode that
yeah.
would just like blew me away like that.
I get that argument. And again, I'm not going to deny the emotion of watching it for the first time. I was like, when is it gonna? When is it gonna? Oh my god, it's the end of the series. Like,
Yeah.
I definitely felt
Yeah.
it on rewatch. Like, I enjoyed the build up, and I really enjoyed like the message of this episode.
Hmm.
And like from a um allegorical storytelling perspective, I really enjoyed this episode on the rewatch because I really like that. Like, there's some very deep themes and a lot
Mm.
of like answered questions that have been like hovering for a long time. Um, so I didn't hate it. I didn't hate it. I enjoyed it. But
Mm.
I do also get the frustration.
Yeah. I think the thing is that we were kind of pinning a lot on the last, was it 2 or 3 episodes before this? So of a lot of stories, like it basically what this episode did kind of do in isolation as one episode, not taking into account that it's the end of the series or what came before it. I actually think one of the better episodes of the seasons. However, that we knew as we were watching the last couple of episodes that it all pivoted on the payoff, which we didn't get at all. It wasn't like it was a bad payoff. It was like we were full on blue balls, uh and I think that kind of, despite how this episode now stands on its own, the 2 episodes before it, basically with the exception of a few scenes here and there, might as well have not happened, really. And it could have been the case that this entire series could have been distilled into like 4 episodes. And I think if I'm going to start like making excuses and trying to sort of inject myself with some copium, I will say that it might be the case that there were financial issues that kind of led to this decision, because it did seem that HBO were making a lot of financial cuts lately. I don't know if it has anything to do with the writers' strike. We were told that apparently House of the Dragon was not really affected much by the writers' strike, but it might have perhaps had an effect in how much George R.R. Martin could have liaised with was it Chapotchnik or who's the show? I've
And I mean,
completely
in all
Ryan
fairness,
Condal.
that's the one, yeah.
like a series of a season of like good character work, but not much plot progression. I would prefer that if they can't have George R.'s input than a season where they're rushing to get plot done at the expense of the like logical kind of themes that would come from George R. stories. Like it's kind of the extreme opposite of what they did with the last couple of seasons of Game of Thrones, where they were rushing to get through as much plot as possible and completely neglected the characters and the allegory and the metaphor and like the slow building of tension and the character work. And it's the extreme opposite of that, where they're drawing out all of the character work, like they're having almost a whole episode of Alicent having a swim. But at least that's not
that scene had no
the
purpose.
opposite side. Like, I'd rather have Alicent having an existential crisis and a swim than Dany going mad in the course of one episode.
Okay, yes, that's
fair.
And this feels a little bit, and this is what kind of makes me possibly feel like they can turn this around, right? This isn't all doom and gloom.
Yeah, it's not irredeemable. It's not wasn't terrible or anything. It was
it's just a very delayed.
Not what it should have been.
Yeah, it's not what it should have been.
It's a very slow build up. Like, let's hope the climax is worth it for this level of.
Yeah,
I don't want to verge too much into sex metaphors, but
so
it's gonna be. It's so weird for me because it's so unpredictable. Because what's coming next, I think, like it's pretty obvious is gonna be the Battle of the Gullet. You know, that's what should have been the finale of this season, I think. And it's changed so much because in that battle in the book, the Rhaenyra and Daemon's youngest children, the 2 boys, are like dragon riders in the battle. So that is it's going to completely change. So I'm just like I have no idea what's going to happen. I gotta wait 2 years. So
yeah. And the thing is, I can only imagine, right? It definitely feels like at least the Battle of the Gullet would have been the thing to have ended on. However, it could just be the case that the money they would have spent on a battle, they spent on the sowing of the red sowing, which honestly, I got to be honest, and this is a shocker to everyone. I think the dragons are like my least favorite part of Game of Thrones, the whole Game of Thrones universe. Like, honest to goodness,
I love them.
Don't get me wrong, I do not dislike the dragons, and I do like what they've done with like Sheep Stealer that we saw for the first time, of course, in this episode. That Sheep Stealer looked amazing, absolutely. But I remember when they were talking about, when there's a lot of discourse about them saying that they were putting the money into the dragons rather than the direwolves. I was thinking, actually, I think I'd rather have seen some really cool direwolves. But that aside, I would have seen like the red sowing being sort of rolled back a little bit in favor of a Battle of the Gullet, and I actually, and this is again going to be one that I think is going to be a contested opinion. I like the Tywin Lannister in Essos scene. It should have been a bit.
Hard disagree on that one.
I think it should have been earlier in the season.
It was dumb fun. It was dumb fun. Yeah, I agree. It should have been earlier in the season. But again, given that the main complaint from season 1 was a lack of levity, it was really nice to see, and like also like season 1, the lack of levity and the feeling of it being such a tiny universe. season 1 of House of the Dragon was just the Targaryens in King's Landing and maybe a little bit of Dragonstone. It was
Yeah.
really nice to see some Braavosi fun beards and culture, and like it was fun. Again, I think I get the argument it should have been earlier in season, but I enjoyed it. Like, kind of like I will put out it again if we're doing controversial opinions.
Mhm.
I enjoyed it in the same way I enjoy watching Star Wars this episode, where like I enjoyed it for the experience of enjoying the plot happening. If I were to view it as part of the whole universe and the experience of then having to wait for 2 years, I would probably find it disappointing. But actually, the scenes and the stuff that happened, I really had a good time watching it.
Yeah, I think Game of Thrones has, and when I say Game of Thrones, I mean like the whole Game of Thrones like universe and stuff. It has silly bits in it, like it's always had silly bits in it. And definitely I much prefer the silly levity over the dourness of season 1. I get why people don't like it because it was silly, but we are talking fantasy. There's got to be a little bit of silliness in fantasy, and I like the colourfulness of it as well. Like everyone had different, like, one of the things that is great about the Game of Thrones, the costumes. I've never seen, whenever I look at any kind of fantasy that's not Game of Thrones, maybe there might be some like Hollywood films that manage to get to the same level, but I can't think of any fantasy, medieval sort of fantasy, where the costumes were just as on point as Game of Thrones, where they actually look like things people would have lived in and worn in, and they don't look costumey at all. I think the opposite side of things. Have you ever seen Merlin?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, also, if we're talking about bad costumes from the BBC, I've got to give a shout out to like the early 2000s Robin Hood, where we called it Top Shop. Like, honestly, it was terrible. It was wonderful, but terrible. Also, that's the first show that me and my sister coined the term cotton famine, from when usually men just decide to go shirtless randomly because why not? And so now if there's ever like a historical drama where there's not really plot necessary upper chest nudity, we're like, oh, the cotton famine's hit again, what a shame. Oh no.
Yeah. I actually quite like Tyland Lannister actually as a character, and
Yeah, they
honest
made
to
it
good,
quite like they've kicked the dog enough in this season that I kind of like him because he's been so like just beaten down.
or human, like it's a very human element to him. But also, here's the thing about, I don't know who Tyland, the actor that plays Tyland is, right? I think it's the same as the guy who plays his brother Jason Lannister.
Yes.
But do you
same guy?
And I think you
He
might also know
plays
this.
one of the
Hugh of the Vale.
the cousins. Yeah, Hugh of the Vale.
The thing is, I don't even think, like, is he like, he's the same actor that's played 3 different roles, which, has that actually even happened in Game of Thrones before? I know that there have been 3 different actors for the same role of the Mountain. I think that was 3 different actors, right? Yeah, there was, which really confused me when I watched it.
At least 3, yeah.
Yeah, Joffrey's younger brother, what's his name? Tommen. Had 2 actors. So they had 2 actors, and the actor who played Tommen when he was like in a main role had played one of the Lannister cousins who was kidnapped in Harrenhal back in the day. So they really like reusing Lannisters.
Dario Naharis recast.
Yes, well, talking Dario Naharis, they were too scared to give him a blue beard.
Wimps.
Like in the original Game of Thrones. So like I love, like, it was, again, I keep saying how healing House of the Dragon is as a Game of Thrones, like, the Song of Ice fan, or House of the Dragon to actually like commit to the bit. And I love the fact that they actually committed to the bit when it came to blue beards and green beards and just having fun with Braavosi. It's just nice. I liked it.
And they are pirates. Like, it's supposed to be piratey. I want piratey. I could have even done with a hook for a hand somewhere just for pirate shits and giggles. Yeah, or a parrot. Well, we had a CGI monkey. That's pretty piratey. That's, you know. I did also
like from a, like, you know, like, visual languages. So like there's a visual language to the costumes, and obviously there's a language to the music. This is my first time seeing, like, we talk about like making new cultures with the costumes and making new cultures with like the set design and like combining different cultures into one. I am really impressed with the dance choreographer for this episode, because the like pirate harlot dancer, she was not doing any steps of any dance that I recognize. Like, it had some sort of, like, they managed to avoid the cliche of her being like a like belly dancer from the Middle East, or from like the classic sort of harlot belly dancer. And they avoided a lot of the kind of Chinese dancing tropes where you have a brothel type situation, and they have a lot of very specific like ways of dancing. And the fact that it immediately goes into like leaps and bounds, like from a visual, like from a dance language perspective, it was unique enough that I couldn't place it to a culture. And that's really nice. Like, it's really nice when you see something like that where someone has, whoever the choreographer was, has specifically put in intention to try and make that a unique performance as fitting the Bravasi culture. And that's just, it's like really tasty brain food. I can't really describe it. But it's like, it's really lovely. It's really, really lovely. It's like when you recognize a choreographer by their choreography, not by them being in the credits. Or like recognizing a composer by a lilt, or recognizing, I'm trying to think of a different kind of media that I could, like, I don't know, recognizing a chef by their food. I don't know. It's just that sort of like, it was a nice thing to experience as something that I have not a great knowledge of, but enough of a knowledge to be like, I want to know who did that. It was very specific and really nice to see.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. They obviously spent. This is weird, actually, thinking about it. The more I think about it, the weirder it gets. They clearly actually have spent maybe like not a huge amount on the writing side of the of the SL stuff, but like the set design, the CGI monkey, all that kind of stuff. That was probably like they could have stretched that out a few more they could have stretched that out over episodes, like, and just had that as a cutaway, B-roll thing, instead of Damon and Damon and Damon and Damon. That there was far too much,
I mean, they could have saved some budget, because I'm sure Matt Smith's day rate is much more than any of those actors' day rates.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
Yeah.
Like, and in Harrenhal with Caraxes, like...
Yeah, because it's like, dragons are expensive. I bet Harrenhal's a fortune. And yeah, Matt Smith's expensive. It's... So...
And all those cameos?
Yeah. It's a lot. So I think so I'm right to understand that, Max, that's a very hard disagree on our positivity towards the SLs.
Did not enjoy this.
I can't be too much of a hater. It's,
it just wasn't your
I
cup
think
of
it
tea.
should have, it wasn't my cup of tea. It should have been, I think, spread out through more of the season, because it just sort of felt tacked on at the end and rushed and all at once. Like, Thailand just, gets there and wins them all over, and with a mud wrestling match. I don't know. It felt a little bit like I get things can be silly and fun, but it just wasn't what I was looking for in this episode.
I did enjoy
So
the
I
fact
can't be
that
too big a hater.
there was great chemistry between the actors, but it wasn't sexual. Like, and the point where they made it sexual was then they immediately like did a nice little undercut.
Yeah.
And I was just like, it was nice. Like it was efficient writing. I wouldn't necessarily say it was amazing writing, but it was very efficient to get those two characters who are very distinct, and they really tried to make them very distinct, because we know Tywin and we know what he's like, and we know, like, they put him in like heavy surcoat in like Mediterranean weather, sweating and insects and just wanting to have a bath, and then they paired him up with this very tall person, and I really like it. even if what it lacked in some of the nuance of the writing, it made up for in visual style, it made up for in natural chemistry. And I believe that like they have a sort of camaraderie. It didn't feel that rushed again. I feel like, as I said, it could have been spread out and probably should have been put in an earlier episode. Particularly given how much travel is involved.
Yeah.
It could have had this in the last episode and instead had Damon's like resolves in this episode, or more Helena. We always wanted more Helena. I'm so glad we got Helena this episode.
Oh, yes, agree.
Okay,
there.
should we talk about Helena? Because I have a lot to think about.
Let me scroll down to my section on her.
Okay. I don't know. I got to find a section with. So she has just basically become, in my eyes, one of the most interesting characters right off the like.
Oh yeah, she's just been in the background. I love her.
She's always been in the background. So the thing that I want to think about over the next 2 years. So they've given us something. Is she Alice Rivers, or is she connected with Alice Rivers, or like?
Yeah, well, I brought that up because I thought the casting was really good because I thought the actresses looked very similar. And I genuinely don't know whether or not the casting director thought of that, or whether or not that's just my brain interpreting faces.
Now, I've got a possible theory. It's kind of scrabbled together. I've heard other people talk about it, so I'm sort of, it's semi-lifted, right? But you remember? Do you know the scene where Alicent and Helena are sitting down? Alicent pours Helena some tea and says, "Drink it," and then Aemond comes in demanding that she rides the dragon. Now, some people have suggested that that's moon tea because Aemond might be taking Helena to bed to maybe get another heir. And that heir would possibly be, his like legacy. But at the same time, as I understand it, and I hope this is as I understand it, maybe some book spoiler here, that in Harrenhal, Aemond goes to Harrenhal and has a sexual liaison, maybe children, with Alice Rivers.
Yes.
But we also see Alice Rivers wake like on the side of Damon's bed when he's there. Now, we don't know if anything has gone on there, or she is just like creeping about in the night, because I mean, either of those seem like they could happen. So I feel like this is all connected in a very magical way, where it's like Aemond, Daemon, swallowed up in the God's Eye, with like Helena and Alice Rivers being the, I don't know, some sort of mystical link in there.
I don't think they're the same person, but I definitely view them like I don't know whether or not you guys have ever played the Shadow or Mordor game.
No.
Where they basically made Shelob a sexy lady so that she could be a mirror image of Galadriel, which is a really dumb way of doing that plot. I do think Helena and Alice represent opposite sides of the same coin. And I think they're like a yin and yang dynamic. One of them's a dragon dreamer and one of them's a green dreamer. They're similar in kind of appearance. I definitely think that I was spoiled for Aemond having a relationship with Alice, and obviously he has quite obviously coveted an interest in Helena for a while, and again the casting of the actresses looking somewhat similar. Like I feel like there is parallels to draw, and it might be part of the setup for that instigating of the relationship, because they are like the white haired and the dark haired, like a sort of
Ice and
like
fire
Helena seems to be stuck in a childhood sort of scenario, where Alice seems wise beyond her years. Dragon dreams versus green dreams, like there's definitely, I don't think, again, to say they're the same person is to definitely undercut a lot of what could be going on there. But I really like the allegory speaks for itself.
Well, I mean, I haven't developed any kind of full theory as of yet. I think I've got 2 years. I'm going to work on. I'm going to try and like weave this out because it's
Rewatch.
not. It's not really like a book thing. I think this would be something similar to the show. But one thing about this show that they do seem to be a little bit more interested in that the book, Blood and Fire. Was it? Hang on a minute. What is it called? Did I get it right? Fire and Blood.
Iron
That's it.
Blood.
The is that they seem to want to link this into the main Game of Thrones plot a little bit more than Fire and Blood. Now, what it could be the case, and this might be interesting, could be that when we saw Aemond's vision, we saw the Three-Eyed Raven / Blood Raven / Brynden Rivers in a much younger state. It could be the case that now Brynden Rivers / the Blood Raven is not happening. Has not happened yet, so that was a future vision. However, we do know
many generations after this. Well, not
many
many, like
generations.
3 or 4 generations after this.
Yeah, I would say 3 or 4 is many generations, but yeah, like it's much closer to Game of Thrones than it is to House of the Dragon. However, it could be the case that well, first of all, I think that that specific bit of the vision was a hook in to the Dunk and Egg story that we're going to be getting next year. So we've got some Game of Thrones action next year. So it's not a whole 2 years blue ball scenario.
That's true.
And
I'm more looking forward to that at this point than I am to season 3. Honestly,
kind of.
So we can talk about that later, maybe.
Yeah.
No, I'm excited for season 3.
Well, the thing is,
I'm excited for season 3, but this I'm more excited for.
This is going to be interesting, but I think that bit with the Blood Raven might just be a bit of a teaser for Dunk and Egg. However, it could be the case that Alice Rivers, Helaena could be the genesis of the Three-Eyed Raven, where they kind of meld together, or they are part of the same force but different, like in the same way that Bran and Three-Eyed Raven were like different, and then they kind of came together. So I don't know, maybe there's something going on there, but I do feel that Matt Damon. That's okay.
Matt
I don't know where.
Have we not drawn that connection?
That's so funny.
So how?
I can't believe that's not just a standard meme.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So
that should be cross-border meme.
Yeah. So Damon's final like looking into the weirwood, that could have taken the place of like 2 of his previous like long scenes from previously. So he had too much screen time, and Helaena did not have enough screen time. And I think again this would have been one that could have been done earlier. That being said, I really liked how that scene, how that line actually ended up playing out with Daemon sort of realizing that he doesn't want. And actually, it does tie in with the scene with Viserys. I think we saw it last week where he's like, "Do you really want the crown? It crushes everyone who wears it." And to me, that was almost the point in which he decided that he was not going to usurp Rhaenyra. And I feel that some of this was just retreading that ground, albeit both scenes were good. But I kind of feel like, well, I thought he was already like that, yesterday's scene kind of made him realize that he didn't want to be king. He just wanted to be the top dog or whatever it was, like it was ego, but it was nothing more. And I feel like that bit sort of trod over it a little bit more. But that being said, I love the rallying of the armies. I love when Rhaenyra was flying in with Adam, and you saw all of Harrenhal, how big it was, and you saw the size of the armies around it.
I love the shot of Harrenhal from the outside. Was awesome. Just to get that sense of scale. Yeah, I really enjoy. Like I will say, going from my point about Alicent having a long bath. Like the Daemon, they wanted to have a Daemon arc where he came to terms with, actually, I can push aside my ego and support Rhaenyra. And they wanted that arc to last the whole season, And they wanted to keep him on screen and last the whole season. And again, if we're going with the theory that they couldn't get George R.R. because of the writers' strike,
or Duncan Egg, or any there's
or whatever, like if they couldn't
Winter.
progress the plot, like I'm okay with a very slow character piece. And the things with character pieces, particularly when you're trying to impose upon a character development, like changing his attitude, like to do that rushed would be a disservice to the character. It was a bit drawn out, but when you have those changing attitudes character arcs, which are internal, put into an external format so it's visual and interesting to watch, it does come with like multiple tiers. It's not just, oh, I saw one thing and my entire mental mindset has changed and I want to support Rhaenyra now. Like it comes with stages, and coming to terms with the fact that he manipulated her as a child, coming into that he makes messes and she has to clean it up. Like the progression of the relationship with his brother, like the idea that he was fleeing from his responsibilities and all of this stuff. I have hiccups. Terrible for a podcast to have hiccups. I get it. Again, it was drawn out, but having gotten to the end of that arc, I would prefer a whole season of someone slowly coming to terms with a change in their personality and a change in their primary motivations than to have a one episode turning mad.
Yeah, one of the things I quite liked about the scenes at Harrenhal were that whenever there was a wide shot of Harrenhal, you saw the God's Eye, and it looked. We've only seen it at a distance, but it looks really cool, and I do hope we get to see like the God's Eye at some point in the future, which I think we do, because it is where Aemond and Daemon have their final showdown. So,
well, yeah, Helena gives the biggest spoiler.
Yeah, she drops the spoiler.
Like, if you don't know that that's a spoil, because I don't think the God's Eye has been specifically mentioned in the TV show. So if somehow you're watching just the TV show and have avoided all spoilers, then you will have the conclusion of the God's Eye being like, oh shit, this is where he's gonna go die, fuck. But like, if you have any tier of spoils, which I have been vaguely trying to avoid, but like, I knew about the God's Eye. Like, I mean, she's potentially, if we keep on bringing up like who's the narrator of the story, maybe Helena is the ultimate narrator of House of the Dragon. Like that's why House of the Dragon has got such good
I'm starting to believe that more now. This episode gives so much evidence.
Also,
that
we get given another massive spoiler. Rhaenyra sits on the throne again. Like,
yeah.
I mean, maybe. Is that a future vision, or is that
if you could see 200 years into the future in Daenerys,
Yeah, and he sees.
Also, they could get Millie Alcock to come back, but they couldn't actually get Dany to come back.
Yeah,
they couldn't get Emilia Clarke to come back and be naked again.
She's expensive, right? Like, as well.
I know. She's expensive and she's busy.
Yeah. But here's the thing that I do think is quite interesting. Now, I don't know. I'm sure I might have known at one point, but I've since forgotten the succession for how it goes down, because so I'm kind of working from Helena spoilers and Alice Rivers spoilers from the show, but it does kind of. I think, as it lays out, Rhaenyra's going to come at the very beginning of next season, maybe even not the very beginning, but somewhat at the beginning of next season, take the Iron Throne. But Aegon with Larys has now sodded off. He might come back and he might sit on the throne. There might be more, because Helena does say that Aegon will be king again, but he's fucked off. So he's got to come back and be king again. But also, we've got a vision that says that Rhaenyra's going to be queen. So does Do they get married? No, that doesn't. I don't know.
I mean,
like,
incest.
Well,
Why not?
Aegon's cock is obliterated.
Yeah.
That's one of the best lines of the
I mean,
episode.
to bring up like a penis thing and really like properly put a visual in the minds of anyone who has a penis. I am sorry on behalf of you guys, the show writers.
Yeah.
oh, we
Know
had
how
it
to form
coming.
an image.
Yeah, that was
Clearly,
actually.
he's not going to have it coming anymore.
He like, let's be honest, that's the gods putting an end to his fucking shit, really, isn't it?
Like, they're definitely putting an end to his fucking.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
So I think that's a little bit of a divine punishment. However, I actually thought this scene was really good as well with him and Larys. And I like that they've like, because of course famously Tyrion in Game of Thrones, when he got his scar at the Battle of Blackwater, they really prettied it up for TV. Whereas, as
Oh,
I understand it,
yeah.
in the books, like a big just chunk of his face and nose were cut off. Now, admittedly, I
Yeah.
don't know how that would have played into the budget with prosthetics and makeup and all that kind of stuff. Maybe
They
they
would
could
have
have
had
done
to do
it.
digital work to do the full work. Otherwise, it would look really
Yeah.
Yeah.
crappy.
If they really went all the way with the nose, they would have to have like CGI constantly on his
But
face.
I do like how the makeup for Aegon comes out. I do like the fact that, like, I like his like the way that he portrays the what's the word I'm thinking of, like uh the nihilism of it all, the like, what's the point, the fatalism, like, it's just like,
Yeah.
what's the point of all this? Like, it's just a spiral of despair to him at this point. I don't have a cock, no one likes me, I'm likely to get killed by my brother. Like, like, he truly feels at his lowest
Yeah,
point.
his brother and his sister both want him dead. Woof woof.
Yeah, and it's like, and Larys is like his only friend, and I kind of feel like Larys actually like empathizes with Aegon a lot on a personal level as well as a political level. So, and also,
I
let's
think
be
he
honest,
empathizes with him now.
yeah, now, yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
there was very little empathy before, other than oh, you poor moron.
exactly, and so what I would be interested in seeing in maybe season 3 would be a little bit of, like, how we saw like the Varys and Tyrion roadshow, where like they would do cutaway scenes that would just be
Mhm.
a little bit of banter. I think that would work really well between Larys and Aegon, to be honest. I think Aegon has nailed his role in this particular season.
Oh my God.
So,
Yeah. I think he might be the MVP of the season for me.
oh, the MVP. No, the MVP for the
Ooh.
season is Simon Strong. Sir Simon
Oh,
Strong,
okay.
sorry.
Yeah. He's
There's a
he's
great
up
little
there.
scene. And his outfit was amazing, and I'm glad I'm not the only one who saw it, or sort of thought that. But the bit where
I
everyone,
mean, Simon Strong's basically playing Parent Trap.
he kind of, yeah, and it's
Yeah.
like, I love the little bit where, like, Damon's rallying the troops, and like Simon Strong is just there in the background going, "It's all
Yeah.
worked out in the
I saw
end. It's
that.
okay. There will be
I also
Christmas after
liked
all."
what's he called? What was the guy that Rhaenyra sent away because he was being
Oh,
a tosser
Broom.
to go
Is it
deal with
Alistair Broom?
Broom, like sneaking back out through the crowd during that speech and being like, "I'm
Yeah,
out!
I'm out.
Fuck!
Oh
Shit!
shit!
Balls!"
I overplayed my hand. Oh dear. Yeah,
Yeah.
that
Also, did you guys watch with subtitles or did you guys watch without subtitles?
didn't watch with
Where?
subtitles. Should I
So
do
in
something?
the scene where he meets with Daemon in the Godswood,
Mm-hmm.
and Damon's like, "Oh, you
Yes.
can." I didn't hear it because I was watching on my laptop, and my audio on my laptop's not amazing. And he like whispering voice, "Traitor."
Yeah, I did.
And I was like, "Oh, okay,
Yeah.
cool, yeah." The
Okay.
Godswood does not like him.
It doesn't. But also, do we know what that hoofed creature was that was there as
Yeah, I have
now?
no idea.
Now there are theories going around. One of them being that this is how they're depicting the children of the forest in House of the Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be the case that like they live on the God's Eye, and that was what that was what they looked like. It could have something to do with the goat. It could be like that goat is a manifestation of.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe it was something to do with like heron, black heron, like
Oh
the
yeah.
spirit of the house of Aaron Hall, or like my brain did briefly think it was a man with a wolf's head, which made me think it might be a future vision of Robb Stark.
Mm-hmm.
But then I rewatched and it's more antlers, but it's growling. Like it's literally what, maybe 20, like 10 frames.
Yeah.
Like I went back to it about 10 times to get another look at it, and I couldn't get anything clear. I need to watch it on like my bigger TV, I think. Like I couldn't crack it. It was cool. I liked it. It was
Yeah.
spooky.
It was really good. I'm just trying to find it now on.
What's the time code? Because I think I missed that completely.
Okay, so the time
It was literally like, I
37
said, like
minutes and 4
10 frames.
seconds.
So it's when she's leading Daemon out into the Godswood, and as she approaches the tree, there is literally a shot where a creature just literally walks up towards the tree, and then in the
Oh,
next shot it's gone.
oh yeah. Okay, yeah. I forgot about it. I did notice it the first time. I forgot about it. Yeah,
I literally
I
did a
have no
double take
idea
the
what that
first
is.
time. Like
It's
it's just cool and spooky. I like it.
it's
I
a
like it so
person
much.
with antlers and hooves. Maybe this is interesting, and maybe this is like an allusion to isn't there an Essos religion that worships a goat? Oh, that's not a goat though. That's clearly antlers.
It's clearly antlers, yeah. So it
The
could be
deer
something
or
to do with
deer person.
Baratheons, or the like. If we're talking about like the first men, it could be like just like a vision of the old gods. Like it could be literally a depiction of the old gods, like
Yeah,
incarnate. I mean, like maybe like the old gods is very kind of druidicy, naturey, pagany.
Mm,
So I wouldn't put it past it being a sort of, if you're going with more classic non House of the Dragon canonology, then you could go with like the Green Man type vibes.
yeah.
But it's spooky and I like it.
I mean, it could
It was definitely like a what was that moment.
it was perfectly done, and it looks back at him and then just disappears.
You just can't get like it was a really good like low level illusion double take. Like hallucination double take, like when you see something out the corner of your eye when you're driving and you're like, oh, was that a deer? And you're not sure, was it a hedge, was it a person? Like it was like a really, like, as someone who gets that quite a lot when I'm tired of driving and I'm like, what was that? It was good.
Yeah, I think my guess right now is Children of the Forest. I think that's a child of the forest, and maybe I don't think they were hoofed in the Game of Thrones, but like the throne was
They
different.
were barefoot.
Although, do you know what I think would be really cool? Would be if Rhaenyra, when she takes the throne, she gets rid of the extra swords and like cuts it back a little bit, and that sort of explains why the Game of Thrones is a little bit more of a sort of a reduced share, because there's a lot of swords there. Like it's a bit like, I get it and it's cool.
It's a bit of a hazard. Like, if my dad died of a horrible crippling disease, probably built from metal toxicity from having horrible tetanus, I'd clear some of the hazardous swords from my dining room.
Yeah. And it's still not quite what you see, what the books are supposed to be, where it's tall. It's still just more swordy. So, and Peter Baelish in Game of Thrones does remark that it's too, it's not even 200 swords. So, I can understand there being a canonical reason as to why they reduced the swords over time. I don't know if it's just a different storytelling or whether or not it's a plot reason. And it could be the case with the Children of the Forest. It might be the case that this is just what the Children of the Forest look like under Ryan Condal's directorship, and maybe because you don't see them as much, like in the same way that you see like Leaf in Game of Thrones, maybe it makes them look a little bit more special when you can hear, like, because it's the it's the hoof sounds that really sort of resonated with me. That made me that really gave an edge of the weirdness to it. So maybe it was just they wanted something that's a little bit more animalistic rather than human, just to like add to the mystery, perhaps.
What were you gonna say, Max?
I was gonna say, yeah, I definitely think it has something to do with the Children of the Forest or the First Men, or that realm of
Mm.
magic and mysticism.
I feel like it would be a cool way of doing, like, if we're saying this is a land of myth and a time of magic. We already referenced Merlin once already this podcast. But if we're saying this is a more magical time, and this is a time where green seers have more powers, and where dragon dreamers have more powers, and black candles can still be lit, maybe there are other depictions within the kind of family of the green seers, within the family of the children of the forest. So who's to say the children of the forest don't ride on, fawns or satyrs, like those sort of things? Who's to say that there's not like, it kind of looked like, have either of you guys played Witcher 3?
No.
There's the
Nope.
Leshens, which are like tree spirits, which have like massive antlers and giant like claw, and they're fucking terrifying. If you come across them in the middle of a wood while running through the open world of Witcher 3, and you come across a Leshen, holy fuck, they're terrifying. And it gave very like Leshen vibes. If you were to Google Witcher 3 Leshen, you'll see what I mean. Yeah, it was very much that sort of like tree spirit, nature spirit vibe for me, which again, if the answer never comes, I'm actually okay with that. Unlike the lot of the Daemon stuff where the resolve seems to be Alice wanted to enforce some character development on him. That seems to be the reason for this extended hallucinatory period. Like it's nice to have a resolve to that. Like an answer to that is Alice wanted him to have some character development. Good, fine, done. Like, I'm okay with this creature never having an answer to it. Like, I'm okay with it being a spooky, mysterious tree something.
Yeah, no, totally. I like it's interesting to see the mystery. What would be kind of interesting is if Aemond and Daemon get swallowed up in the God's Eye, and like, because as I understand it, their bodies are never found. What if they become part of the Three-Eyed Raven collective and just end up being, eaten alive by the trees or whatever, or like, I don't know, made into the thing, and they just like disintegrate in the God's Eye and are a part of the Three-Eyed Ravens.
They become mulch.
Box set, yeah, mulch. It's just a big mulching operation, isn't it? But I really, really, really liked the transition from Daemon to, or Helena from the Vision.
Yeah, that's
into
great.
into Helena Helena into in King's Landing. Like it's just like that was the spookiness of it. Oh, also one thing that I thought was interesting. I'm gonna try and find the timestamp for it.
I enjoyed the fact that when Aemond comes and talks to Helena as she's looking out over into the sky, that he says, "Come with me to Harrenhal," and she kind of just, there's a very like, I don't know if she even reacts, but the fact that she says, "Come," like he says, "Come with me to Harrenhal," and there's just that like, I was just there, dude, type vibe. And like, she just knows. I love, like, she just knows. Like, it's not a question of like, you're like, when he's, his defense is, that is traitorous talk. And she doesn't need to say, like, it's the truth. And she doesn't need to say, I'm not a traitor. Like, she just has authority of, like, she has absolute authority on the given truth.
Yeah.
Like, she doesn't need to defend herself.
Yeah. I'm just trying to like look through the frames to see if there's the bit where someone is walking through a battlefield with a lot of corpses treading through puddles of blood, and then the foot
See, I
trips.
thought it flipped through, and then you have Damon sinking into like the black abyss. So I thought that was Damon.
It
But there is a
certainly
dead
could be.
dragon.
There's
Because
a dead
I
dragon.
assumed that was like part of his transition into the deep dream state. Or the deep vision state. So it was him walking through bodies, and there was a dead dragon, and then he falls into nothing, and then it's time space.
I can't
I really
recognize-
liked that he was a believer. Like, he's gone from being like a proper like cynic to being like, okay, we do this. And I like the fact that that was one of the things that I think there was a musical ping or something to do with Rhaenyra's acting in Valerian when she says, "You sound like my father."
Yeah.
And like, it was just like that immediate like, okay, we're back on the same page. It may not last, as is often the case with toxic relationships, but I've got the feeling it's the start of a new honeymoon period where they're briefly on the same page.
This
I
has
don't know
changed
if it
Daemon.
will last.
Yeah, no, it will. It will last until Daemon dies. Like, I think this is like, could be wrong, but I think this is almost like solidifying up Daemon's final character form in terms of he's always been relatively egotistical, self-centered, self-serving, but then he kind of realizes what it's all for, and he kind of I don't know, I feel this is the permanent
I'm hoping it's permanent. To have
change.
spent this much screen time on it, it would be, but
It better
I am
be
hesitant.
permanent, yeah. I'm just trying to work out with the dead, if the dead dragon is like one of the Game of Thrones dragons, whether this is a flash forward to the Long Night, or whether and the feat that you're seeing is Jon Snow perhaps, or whether or not it's Daemon walking through maybe one of the battles in Dance of the Dragons.
I mean, it could be. Why not both? Because theoretically, obviously, Jon Snow is a descendant. I would assume potentially of some part of the bloodline. So
yeah,
it could be
like
he's walking in another person's shoes, literally.
Yeah.
I haven't actually looked at the screenshot of that. If it's Viserion, I think Viserion was the one who got turned into an ice white dragon. Then half of his face is missing.
Half of his face is missing.
Can you see that? The ice dragon, like half of his face was missing at the point of the Battle of the Long Night. So if it is Viserion, you might be able to see that in the shot.
I don't think he looks. I don't think so.
I mean, I just assume that was a metaphor for, Fire and Blood and the end of the Targaryen line, because he does say when he's describing his revelation that we won't survive it, but somehow we have to.
Yeah, there is also literal fire and blood in that shot. I think I'm seeing a wing behind the dragon, so I think it might look like. I think it might look like there are multiple dragons, by which it would seem that this is a Dance of a Dragon scene.
I think it's very more allegorical than literal.
Allegorical. It's yeah.
It looks to me, there's like 2 or 3 dragons in the scene, so it's probably meant to be the Dance of the Dragons or the Dying of the Dragons.
Yeah. But all in all, actually, I do like that we did see more of Harrenhal. Maybe too much of Harrenhal, depending on who you ask. But it's one of the most interesting castles in Westeros, and I feel that even in Game of Thrones, we only ever saw corners of it. And
I mean, we've said all the way through this very drawn out Daemon arc that if the conclusion does it well, it will make the build up worth it. And I am currently satisfied. I think I want to rewatch the whole series in full. I want to do like a marathon day where I watch the entire of season 2 and maybe even the whole of season 1 as well. I'll be up for a full binge. and see whether or not, when you're watching it in direct succession, whether or not it feels less drawn out, with the conclusion in mind.
But to me, this is only half a conclusion. The other half of him is actually going into battle and actually, like the sort of
doing the business.
Actually doing the business. So I feel like, and this is the thing about this episode that was the most frustrating, is that like every resolution was a resolution, and I know that this is like that's kind of part of the course of Game of Thrones somewhat, but I don't know. I do kind of feel like it felt a little bit just. I don't know.
Like, I get it. I get it. I understand the feeling, although I really, as I said, I really enjoyed this episode for what it was. But yeah, I think like little things like the conversation that he has in Old Valerian with Rhaenyra was just, it was really charming. And like a little bit like, okay, we've both matured, we've both changed a little bit, but then he was just that little bit of like, yeah, that little weird posture moment where he was like, I've tried. Like, she's like, leave me again at your peril. And he's like, I've tried to get away from you. I can't. Like, and it was nice. And like, I want to believe in their relationship. And it made me believe in their relationship a bit. I do have some doubts still. But it seemed like it was just in again, I want to rewatch this season again, but in the same way that Rhaenys and Corlys had their like cute flirtations, and he joked about like sometimes he quite enjoys a lady on top type thing. Like I think Daemon's finally like, I could get behind this. Like I could get behind having a more like, maybe sometimes bowing before your wife is actually not too shabby.
I think he's just genuinely been humbled. Like he understands he's not all he ever thought he was, or like that even if he is everything he thinks he is, there's so much bigger that he is insignificant in the. He is not the player of the game. He is a piece on the board. I think that's all.
He's part of the story, not the hero of the story.
That's lit. Like they basically. Part. They told us. They just told us what his revolution straight to us. Really, I guess.
Well, like the if there was a metaphor for this particular episode, it was that it's all part of a story, and like so many threads fall into. If you think of it as part of like the extended Game of Thrones story, and you think about also like different interpretations of history. And like how people are perceived when they become a story, or when they become a myth, or when they become part of the history books. Like that's repeated all the way through this episode, where you have things like Cole and his handkerchief, like prizing after his queen is very like knightly valor. But we know that he's not particularly a knightly valor character. But how will he be remembered by history? He might be remembered as the White Knight who was, like, and Alicent saying that she's happy to. People will see her as they see her. She's okay to be the villain if it means she can get things done or be free or live free. And the idea of just being a part of like, and also like the idea that Helena says the word "'tis just a story" in relationship to Daemon's vision of the Song of Ice and Fire, which obviously could end up being Daenerys. Being Azor Ahai, that's who we saw in his vision. Or it could be that the vision is bullshit, because we know that Arya is gonna be the Azor Ahai.
That's what I was thinking the whole time.
The story is false. The story, like, 'tis just a story. It's something that, like, the history books tell us is true, but it's not. And so the idea that he's wasting his time on this allegory, this vision, this dream, Aegon's dream, that is false, or like, George R.R. loves his misinterpretation of prophecies. He adores that as a subplot. So the idea that the Song of Ice and Fire is just a story that you pass down, and all these characters are just archetypes, it was juicy, and I loved it.
I'm willing to go out on the limb and say that Arya still is not the prince that was promised. I wish they made it Theon, to be honest, because that would have been a bait and switch that would have really been interesting. I still think that it's either like Jon Snow and Daenerys and everyone else, or it's. I mean, with this in mind, I'm fine to say that it's
friends
Daenerys.
you made along the way.
It's the friends you made along the way. Like, I mean, maybe there was no one prince that was promised. Maybe it was Jon Snow. Maybe it was Daenerys. It's either Jon Snow or Daenerys, right? And I think this vision probably points to Daenerys, right? Although that being said, it doesn't necessarily say so, because it could just be that she was just a key person in the same way that Bloodraven was there in that vision. It could be that Bloodraven is the prince that was promised, for all we know.
Yeah. Or it could be that the star itself, like it had the shooting star, like the meteor that went over at the birth of the dragons. Like it could be that the star itself is part of it. Who knows?
Actually, why don't we hear more about the Bran being the prince that was promised?
Because Bran is a robot that no one cares about.
Bran the boring.
Bran the boring.
Bran became the king. Like,
yeah, his vision stopped right before Bran the boring.
But the thing is, it's if it's Bloodraven that is basically inhabiting Bran's body, then I think that then you can perhaps maybe say, and because he is, in a wheelchair, like the sword, the cat's paw dagger, is it's the sword, but obviously someone else would wield it. So I don't know, like.
So you're saying Arya is the sword, the flaming sword that was forged in the fire of sacrifice. That was wielded by Azor Ahai to kill the Night's King.
That would be, something in that ballpark. I mean, obviously, this being Game of Thrones, the prophecy is fluffy and not, doesn't really have defined edges or anything like that. But yeah, like Bran is the bait. So that's part of killing the Night King, right? He's the one that Night King's after.
I just enjoy the idea that if Helena is kind of like Helen of Troy, and she sees the abject truth to things, and no one believes her. She sees what is actually true. I really love the idea that she looks into Daemon's vision via the tree, which is also a shared prophecy of Azor Ahai. And what she sees is like, this is bullshit. This is just a story that we tell ourselves to get through the day. Like, and I would love if that kind of the interpretation where actually, because she's seeing the real truth of the matter, that she actually is like, this is not how it will come to be. And it just, again, it like so much of the allegory of this season makes my brain like gobble it up. It's like a really tasty meal or a fragrant wine.
I just don't like being reminded of Game of Thrones season 8. That's what this did for me, and I don't know. I was not really down with it.
So what? One thing I did find that was quite interesting, going back to House of Dragon, then, is after the vision, right? You see Helena. I don't know what direction she's facing out at, because there would have been some interesting thoughts if she, for example, was in the Godswood, where she could connect with Daemon because they're both at Weirwood trees, right? Now, it might be the case that Helena is a dragon dreamer rather than a green seer. Whether or not they're the same thing, whether or not they're interoperable, or it's who knows? She doesn't look like she's not got like a magic candle, but she does look like she could be looking over, obviously too far away to see eye to eye, but looking over possibly towards Harrenhal. I don't know. There's very little clues as to what direction she's facing.
Yeah, I don't know whether or not that even really matters if she's seeing through space-time. I did enjoy the fact that in the previous scene with Alicent, she said to Daemon, to Aegon, I'm just going to bed. And like, we're talking about Dreamfire, we're talking about dragon dreams, we're talking about green dreams. Like, she might have been going to her bedroom, but maybe she dreamed her connection, or like was asleep, because she was obviously in her nightgown. It was late at night. Like maybe she'd fallen asleep and walked her way out into the tower, and then had just woken up at the point that Aegon came in, and she'd been dragon dreaming. I am vaguely spoiled for her ending. And so when I saw her atop the tower with the crumbling wall and no good safety on top of that tower, I did get a little nervous that I'd misinterpreted the timeline.
My suspicion is that they are going to change Helena's ending.
Well, so far, like, obviously they said by this point in the story, like, she's broken, her brain is like cracked, and she's just kind of like sweet and crazy. And so far she seems pretty, like, again, that could be like a classic, like the story that the small folks tell, is the queen went crazy after the death of her children. But obviously they don't know her. So I enjoy the fact that, like, that's obviously, that can be put up to the showrunners how they interpret that.
Yeah.
But she does at the moment seem pretty damn compos mentis, perhaps even more so than she was in previous seasons. She's having very direct conversations with Alicent about, like, why the commoners hate us. I wouldn't put it past, like, it was, again, Alicent said, like, not like this, there's no point. Like, what will be worth protecting if her mind is broken? And so I think Alicent's very aware of how trauma builds up. And like traumatic weight, and Helena's been through quite a lot. So I think they'll change her ending, but I think they'll change it, like, she, again, it's not going to be she goes mad and just jumps off the tower.
I know that would be too
it'll be too operatic.
Kind of, yeah, I guess so. Like, I reckon that it could be, I'm only just wildly shooting from the hip on this one, but it could be the case that she goes missing or runs away, and the reason she people think she killed herself is because maybe a certain Orwell was covering up for her, because Orwell, as we know, he might also be an MVP. I'm really liking Orwell in terms of his character, even though he's a very in the background kind of character. That guy, I don't know what, like, he is a spy master, because he can get,
absolutely,
like, because he presumably, like,
he helped smuggle Alicent out.
He must have helped with Aegon, right?
Well, the thing is, Aegon was smuggled out in the Raven cart. Did you guys notice that? The cart that they were being smuggled out in is the Raven cart, and who manages the Ravens? The Maester.
The Maesters. So
Orwell definitely was responsible for smuggling Aegon out of the city. 100%. There is no like lack of clarity there. They were in the Raven cart. Like, the cart that was leaving the city was the Maester's Raven cart. So probably they're going out via Old Town to get to wherever they're going. So potentially that could be a way of introducing other characters by and by, if they're sending the Ravens out to Old Town or vice versa. But yeah, it's in the Raven cart. So 100% Orwell was responsible for that smuggling.
Oh man.
I was gonna say, we do not know for sure that Helena kills herself. That's just, that's the theory of the Maesters writing the book, based off of the evidence and the perspective that they have. They even mention that, the small folk and a lot of people thought that Rhaenyra, it was the one that, is responsible for her death in the end, and that
I mean,
so
it could be if they
maybe
think
they could take her death,
Yeah, well, if they think Rhaenyra was responsible in the same way that Rhaenyra was responsible for the death of Laenor, the hiding of Laenor's death could be foreshadowing her potentially rescuing Helena. Because she's always defended Helena. She's always treated her like the younger sister that she is.
Yeah.
So, she's the babysitter she always wanted.
Yeah.
But
it could be the case, and this is a bit wild, but it could be that Helena is, like, Bloodraven 0.1. You know, she's the precursor to to the three-eyed raven. Maybe, you know, she might be the thing that starts it. Like, I'm pretty like it's weird, right, to think, right, obviously a guy in a tree is weird, but like, he didn't just go up there of his own volition, sit in a tree and wait for it to grow around him. There's obviously like some kind of old magic. It comes from somewhere, right? So it could be the case that Helena is is part of that earlier process in some way, shape, or form. She might be an earlier part of the three-eyed raven. She might be like
I think
do a Bran or something like that.
if any character so far in this series deserves a happy ending, it's Helena. So I really hope she doesn't become a tree person. I hope, like, maybe, like, obviously I am slightly spoiled for what happens with her children. So, like, if she, like, runs off and lives out in the Godswood for the rest of her life, just chilling with the Greenseers, I'd be happy with that. Like, you know, I don't want to have a sad ending for her, because that'll be a real bummer.
Yeah, she could be like the tree person of the god's eye for all we know, or something, you know, like it. But one thing, actually, speaking of spoilers, is I know Larys's ending, and I do happen to know that it does take place, I think, in King's Landing, or certainly in Westeros. So
I think in King's Landing, yeah.
I would assume King's Landing, unless I'm missing a point. So my suspicion, so I kind of know from that Aegon's probably gonna come back, and also Helena did say so. I
He'll come
yeah,
back and sit on a wooden throne.
yeah. But I hope, yeah, I'm looking forward to more scenes. One scene that I really did quite enjoy. I'm just gonna try and find it now. Oh, I had it a moment ago. It was
Yeah,
the one with Kristen Cole. There we go.
Yes,
that was
I
a
enjoyed.
half good, half bad scene for me.
I mean, it was
The whole
the.
wait,
Do we agree
it
on what
seemed
was bad?
it was weird how all of a sudden Gwen's like, "Oh, you're fucking my sister," and it just seemed like out of nowhere. I saw, you know, like obviously he had her favor or whatever, and he was like looking at it, but it just seemed like there should have been more build up to that, and it felt out of nowhere. What
I
I did like about it was Cole, Kristen Cole being like nihilistic, like I don't have any philosophy. Like, what the fuck does it matter? The dragons are just like these insane
yeah.
killing machines were fodder. You know, that I like.
Yeah,
I agree on both fronts on that. Where, like, the beginning of the scene, it doesn't make sense to me, because Gawain being like, "I'm gonna yell about my sister sleeping with you." That's a really sensible thing to do in front of my soldiers, to say that the queen, whose entire banner is based on chastity, I'm accusing her sworn white knight of having sex with her, loud enough that half of the army can hear, with my sword out at his throat. And then it just kind of goes to like a really good conversation about nihilism, and like what is a foot soldier in comparison to nukes, and like what is, like, just coming to terms with the fact that he's, like, you know, he's maybe not as white knight as he should be, and he does have guilt, but he has knightly denial and all of that jazz. But just the fact that it started the scene with, like, "Hey, stop fucking my sister, who's also the queen, and I shouldn't ever say to anyone that she's totally having sex with you, because that ruins both your reputations," seemed real stupid.
I understand. I get that. Like, yes, it is a bit unusual. Like, it's a bit unusual. It was a bit odd
Not
to like start the scene like
unusual.
that. But it's like, because he's there, he's looking at the handkerchief, he's having a good old sniff, and then boom, sword at his back. Part of me thinks that was a little bit like half jokey, like it was just like, it's just the boys being boys a little bit, where he's like, he I don't think he's super serious, because or like, because he's not going to win against a fight with Kristen Cole. Kristen Cole is one of the probably the best swordsmen around at the time, I would imagine.
I
And
mean, you've kind of got to be super serious if you're going to put a sword against a master swordsman's throat. Even if you're like joking around with the
it's
boys,
the
like that guy
army,
can
innit?
literally murder you. Yeah.
But maybe but yes, the thing
we
that
know how shady Christian Cole is. Like putting your sword to his throat is just like, hey, come kill me, dude. And also being like, hey, you've soiled your white cloak by fucking my sister. Like that's literally being like, hey, I have like a really good place to stab, like between here to here. Do you want to just give it a go, Kristen?
And also, but the thing I think what they wanted to depict in the scene was how Kristen Cole, like the Kristen Cole's nihilism of like, well, you go ahead and kill me now if you want. I'm going to die now or I'm going to die later. It's all the fucking same to me. I think that was what they, and and maybe they just fluffed the build up to it. But
the idea of him cherishing a favor throws back to season 1 and like favors and ladies and knights and the stories we tell about ladies and knights and favors and, you know, I carry your heart with me because I have your favor. And so I think the implication of him having the obvious favor that we've had at least 2 scenes, if not 3 scenes in the courtyard with Alicent flirting with Kristen or having intimate moments with Kristen with Gwaine looking over. So I think there was enough build up for him to have worked it out.
Gwaine knows, like that's why I think it's like not super serious because, or he was just waiting for Kristen Cole to put the sword down because that's the only way he's ever going to stand a chance.
That I believe more.
But I think the scene was supposed to be there more to focus on Kristen Cole than it was anything to do with Gwaine Hightower. But then the way that Kristen then talks about, well, this is going to soil your name as much as mine, or Otto's name as much as mine, or Alicent's as much as mine. Like, I'm just a lowly Kingsguard from Dawn. Like, I'm a man of no consequence whatsoever. You kill me, the history books might not even make a record of it, but it will besmirch your family name. And what I really quite enjoyed was he kind of dropped into some freestyle war poetry, which kind of had a little bit like, you know, like World War I-y kind of sort of type of nihilism to it.
It was very again, if we're like, the nuclear metaphor has been consistent and continuous, and so we have like, again, Rhaenyra being like, I was hoping that having these dragons would be a deterrent. She says that again in this episode, and then Kristen goes into this whole thing about you know, if I, like, what am I, like, if all I believe in, all I have faith in is the sword, what is a sword against a dragon? Like, what is a handgun versus the nuke? Like, what is a bayonet versus a cannon fire? Like, we're in the next generation of warfare. What does that mean to me, who only knows this tier of warfare? And so it is very, you know, Oppenheimer.
And we just watched Oppenheimer, but with dragons.
Yes. I mean, I've not seen Oppenheimer, so I can't speak to it.
Well, it's such a good movie. You gotta see it.
It's
Billy Murphy.
Right, yeah. Have we got more? What do we make of the scene with Alicent being snuck in and actually, like, sort of the high stakes negotiation of getting Rhaenyra back on the throne?
I enjoyed, like, again, I don't get how, like, the logistics involved in smuggling queens into places where other queens are in charge. Like, between the Nun, like the Operation Nun, and this one, like, who is keeping an eye on these women? Like,
it's stretching my imagination, like my believability, like way too far. Like for it to happen twice.
If can get into Rhaenyra's castle without anyone knowing about it, who's to stop another assassin? Like,
okay, I
put it aside for the sake of good drama, but it is one of those things that both times I've been like, this is logistically nonsensical.
Now, it makes perfect sense to me, partly because she's a woman and is of no threat. Well, is within the sort of the narrative of patriarchy and patriarchy in this world, like. And also, she is known as Alicent Hightower. Like, no one's going to put a sword to her. Like,
she's the queen of the Greens. Like, they would at least, like, if any of the soldiers in Rhaenyra's court
She's
fought her, if
the
it wasn't got
Dowager Queen.
directly.
well, she's dowager.
She's not the queen.
She's still an important political.
No,
like,
she's not.
Like, if they.
Not according to her son.
Well, they don't know that. Like honestly, as a political pawn, she's still a very valuable target. The Queen Mother, like the Queen Mother twice over. Like, let's be honest, the Queen Mother of both the Queen and the King.
So from King's Landing, she can go wherever she wants, right? We know this because of the episode before. She just went out with one Kingsguard.
Yeah, the camping trip.
The camping trip. So she would have had no problem leaving King's Landing, and in reality, she arrives on the shores of Dragonstone. They'll like none of the house guards really like it's a woman and maybe Orwell or like a fishing someone, like they're obviously not.
Like, her sworn protectors wearing Kingsguard outfits, like full Kingsguard.
I mean, they're there. Like they're probably more likely, and this might be a little bit of the class system as well at play, with her being the nobility. Like they're probably much more likely. Even the house guard on Dragonstone are more likely to protect Alicent than they are to kill her. Especially if it's just like, all right, I want to have a talk with the Queen. It's not like if it was a man with a sword, it would be different. But it's dainty Alicent Hightower who.
I mean, I think part of what's stretching my credibility is this is in Game of Thrones, in the era of Game of Thrones, when it's a time of war, it is shown that it is very dangerous to be a lone person. Like, you have Brienne traveling alone, and she is constantly attacked, and she is wearing armor and looks quite scary. And you have,
but
all
Brienne
of the trials and
is often
tribulations
mistaken
that
for a man.
Arya goes through. Well, she's not necessarily, like a lot of people like, cool, blimey, that's a weird looking woman, but they do think of her as a woman, and like as a lone traveler, like even as a set of two, like when she's with Jaime, she's attacked. Obviously, I think they recognize her, but like they have shown that traveling during a time of war is innately very, very dangerous, even in supposedly protected areas. And like, Bran on his own property, when he is a child with multiple protectors around her, is attacked by wildlings. And again, that's in the north, it's wild country, whatever. But I just, like, for me, having that constantly in the background of like the idea that traveling is innately dangerous.
But she put her hood up. It's okay.
Be on guard. Like, she put her hood. Sorry, I forgot.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah,
because like Daemon does it as well. He has his mischief hoodie. He puts the hood up. He can just go straight into King's Landing.
Dragon. Like, that's the thing. Like, he can travel by a dragon. She's got to like sneak out of the castle and get in a boat, and then get to like. Again, I'm not gonna labor too much on the point. It does stretch my credibility, but
I mean, it's okay. It's
not enough to ruin the scene.
I think to me it's perfectly plausible, because none of the House Guard know realistically the intricate politics of it. One highborn woman comes up. She's probably Alicent Hightower, fine, but she's alone. Probably by design. She's no threat to anyone.
Yeah, but like, so what my concern is both. Okay, I think this is what not only the logistics of traveling, but the thing that I think gets me is it's very clear that both the Greens and the Black have very competent spy masters and very competent like insights into other places, and it seems highly unlikely that these two like seemingly very important figures, and yes, Alicent is theoretically a lot less powerful than Rhaenyra ever will be. Like Rhaenyra was already on a pedestal much higher above her, so maybe she has less observation than Rhaenyra. But like the idea that Alicent meeting with Rhaenyra in secret doesn't somehow get back to the Green Council just seems
Well,
so like
the Green Council's in
I mean, the Green
disarray
Council
right
in
now.
shambles. Yeah, I suppose
Yeah,
so.
like I mean,
I just
it's
feel like someone will see something.
you've got Iron Rod really. He's like the one left on the Green Council, right? You got well, all while he's doing the deed, right? You got Tywin Lannister while he's away in Essos. You got Larys, who is shifting Aegon out. To be honest, this is the
Or
perfect
Aemond,
time
who's
for
just
it.
being an asshole.
Aemon's not even there.
Yeah, I
Like
suppose so.
he's oh no, yeah, no,
Of
Aemon's
burning
there, but
cities
he is off burning
and
cities and stuff like
harassing
that.
Helena.
I gotta be honest. Like, I mean, if is it episode 2 where it's Operation Sister Act or whatever? Like she is in. I mean that's explained a little bit more, and I can understand that. I mean, when I was looking at, I was thinking, oh, that yeah, those you put a habit on, you can pass for a nun. There's no problem.
The other thing
And then
is you
Damon
had
does it with a hoodie.
Aemond looking down the port even more post bastard excursion. Like
Yeah, but
it's just another thing where I'm like,
the red.
okay.
The Red Keep that will have a secret dock. They all have. Do you know what I mean? Like it's and
Secret talk.
yeah, like of course they could have a secret dock. In fact, they have the dock where Bronn and Jaime
I think that's
practice
what they
sword
call the
fighting.
whorehouse.
But yeah, no, so like where Jaime and Bronn were having their
Yeah, I know.
it's
Again, I think the point has been laboured enough. It was something that kind of drew my attention away from the scene, but not enough to ruin the scene itself.
I mean, I'm glad just to see a scene where Alicent has a purpose. It's
nice to have like she lost her drive for a considerable amount of time, and it's nice for her to have a new like motivation.
Yeah,
and like a true motivation for the first time. All of the previous times she was governed by other people's motivation, and like it's a very boring, simple motivation, but to survive,
yeah,
is a good motivation. And I like the fact that she wants to be free, and that kind of plays back into Rhaenys's comment about, do you want freedom or do you just want a bigger window in your wall? And I think part of her reaction to seeing Meleys dead and knowing Rhaenys is dead is kind of internalizing what Rhaenys said to her about that, and about like what does she want? Like I think that's what Rhaenys was trying to impart on her. Like what do you want as a person? Like it's not necessarily that you want to be on the throne. It's not like what do you want? Like you need to start thinking about this as an adult woman. And it wasn't till all of this stuff has gone that Alicent has actually put aside the time to be like, oh, what I want is to camp out in the woods with my daughter and for us to all live.
Yeah. I think
like
it's going to be interesting to see the son being raised at Hightower. Was it Daeron?
Daeron.
Yeah,
nice to meet him.
Yeah, because Gwaine says he's kind, and Helena's quite kind, and I think it might be the case. Because I did suggest quite a few episodes ago that Alicent might kill either Aegon or Aemond.
Yes.
Because I don't know. I'm just getting that vibe of
she
like
nodded. She nodded when Rhaenyra gave her the ultimatum. Like you have to choose between me or him.
Accept it.
And like it's interesting that this is the like part of her character progression to trying to find something of her own. Like the choice, like Rhaenyra is for the first time probably in Alicent's life saying, you have the choice, you have the power, you have the decision in this matter. Like you are the one with the authority to make the decision. Are you choosing me or are you choosing him? And leaving it to Alicent to decide. And I think that was part of like when Alicent was walking away from Rhaenyra, like it was like it was a power feeling for her. It's the first time she's really experienced like the authority of choice, where she can make the decision. And that is like it's breaking that wall rather than just having a window. And like it's, in comparison to like it has Rhaenyra saying, "Are you here for absolution?" which is what what she would have always wanted, what Alicent always thought is like through like a little window and some absolution, a little window and some absolution. And instead, what she actually got from her conversation with Rhaenyra was a choice which was her own. And
Yeah.
that's like quite nice.
Actually, that ties in very neatly with the scene from last episode with Viserys, where he talks about the crown crushes anyone who wears it, and it's a bit like Alicent now is feeling the weight of the power that she actually has, where she never really used to have really that much power because she was a woman, and you know, a lot of the time on the council,
I mean, she still is.
She still is a woman, and she's overridden. All her decisions are overridden on the council. Now, in this pivotal moment, she actually does have the power, and she feels absolutely crushed because this power is this kind of crushing thing. But she also knows, really, that neither Aegon or Aemond really are like, they're not I don't want to say they both like deserve to die, but it's certainly very understandable why in a situation of war they would be targets. You know, why basically Rhaenyra says it's like, yeah, I have to kill him, like, obviously, duh.
Yeah.
You know,
and you know this you're smart enough to know. And like these, like, there's an old saying from Game of Thrones, which is when a Targaryen is born, you toss a coin. And you have 4 children of Alicent, and 2 of them are not kind, and 2 of them are kind. So yeah, I enjoyed that, like, that whole scene, and there was interesting as well with them. We talked about with I mean, I talked about, because I talk too much in this podcast.
no.
With Daemon's character arc. Part of all of the repeated different visions basically telling him the same thing is about, like, character arcs aren't always linear. You've got to have step forwards and then step backs. And in this scene with Alicent and Rhaenyra, Alicent was very clearly driven to get there, and then she had a moment where she regressed. She started biting her nails again.
Yes.
And then she stepped back up. So it has that, like, regression and then step forward, regression and then step forward.
Yeah.
Which it was a very small character quirk, but it's a very well established character quirk.
I did notice that on the rewatch.
It was nice to see. I also like the fact that she said something along the lines of, like, don't shame me for what you've done, when she's actually talking about the fact that she has done Cole. And so did Rhaenyra. They're like sex siblings at this point, because they're both done with Cole.
And what's interesting is that
Eskimo sisters. Oh, I don't know if that's a PC term anymore.
It does seem that Alicent and Kristen are kind of going on a very similar, maybe parallel journey about, you know, how, like, the, you know, war, and, you know, war never changes, etc. And
and then also, like, where their authority, like what they have authority over and what they don't have authority over as well. I think they're both coming to the conclusion that, and I think Daemon as well. I think if one part of the main allegory for this episode was, is it all just a story? Are we bound by the stories people tell about us? Are we bound by how history will tell about us? And do we just tell stories about ourselves to describe ourselves? The other allegory is like what we have power to control. And so Daemon's final, like, step forward to coming back to Rhaenyra was, he doesn't have control over fate, but he has control over what he can do and who he sides with. And Alicent has also realized she doesn't have power to govern the city, or, like, to be the queen, but she can have power over her choices. For the first time, someone is saying, you have the power of choice. And I think Christian's coming to the revelation that he has no power when it comes to dragons. Absolutely none. But he does have the power to acknowledge his own flaws a little bit.
That's very interesting.
He cares about.
It's a bit like a seesaw.
Yeah.
So Kristen, before the dragons were used in warfare in this way, Kristen was powerful because he was one of the best swordsmen in the realm, then rising to the rank of Kingsguard. And of course in the patriarchal world, might makes right and all that kind of stuff. Like Kristen was more powerful. Like he certainly felt powerful and was powerful. Whereas like when the tides shift, he actually kind of realized that he's marching towards his annihilation. Whereas Alicent, being very high up in the nobility for the longest time, but in reality, sort of feeling very like underpowered, I suppose, in insofar that she's a woman, but now she's sort of been elevated into this position. She's been elevated and Kristen Cole's been de-elevated, whereas maybe the other way it might have been. I don't know if it was necessarily different the other way around earlier on, but like, yeah, I don't know. It does seem that I don't know. They seem to. It's
always like when you're talking about arcs, there is if you're instigating character change and instigating plot change at the same time, there will be that sort of upswing, downswing, and that's where you get the fun.
Yeah. One thing as well I really, really, really quite enjoyed. I think one of the reasons I didn't quite like this episode on first watch was because I was expecting it was all build up and build up and build up and build up and build up. And I was wondering, are we going to see this Battle of the Gullet? Because they keep talking about it through the whole season. So I'm thinking that's got to be the season payoff. But on the rewatch, the final montage where like Ulf and Adam were gearing up in their armor, where the armies were marching. You saw the Northmen come down from over the Twins. You saw Daemon and his army. You saw Baelor and her running after Sheepstealer, and intercut with Alicent walking away with the hood up. And then of course you saw Otto Hightower in prison.
Yeah, or like on a boat, maybe. Like I was like, Otto, what the fuck? Like. What the heck is going on with Otto?
I want to float a theory about that. I think it could be. So we don't know where he's held, but the immediate thought that you might think is that he's being held by Larys, but he's not, because Larys is being carted away with Aegon. So
there's some throwaway line, I think, that House Beesbury has him or something, but maybe I was wrong about that. But I remember seeing, I didn't notice it myself, but I remember seeing in one of the breakdown videos that it might be House Beesbury, because the guy that
like, okay, if we're talking about secret MVPs, like the Beesburys are the secret MVPs of this entire their revenge game is on point.
I think it's still vague enough that it might not be the Beesburys, but I think that was maybe the implication of might be who has him.
I think we're supposed to think it's the Beesburys, right? Because that would be the most logical thing.
I think it's Mysaria was the one that pinged into my brain.
And
and she wouldn't have brought him to Rhaenyra yet. They get,
I think Mysaria is still hiding some cards.
Could very well be.
Trust it.
I think though it's none of those. I think he is in the black cells in King's Landing, and I think he is being held by Aemond. So Aemond's gone a bit rogue. He is the Rogue Prince 2.0.
Yeah,
he was burning. He burnt that town down and everything like that.
He's being a basic jackass.
Yep. But of course, in the previous episode, we heard him and Larys talking about how that he's yet to pick a hand, and this was brought up by Larys. It was not brought up by Aemond. So Larys says, have you thought about a new hand? And then Aemond is like, he almost he takes the bait, or he says, yeah, bring me Otto Hightower, right? He doesn't instigate. So it's interesting that he doesn't instigate that conversation, but he immediately comes to a distinct conclusion there and then. It might even be the case, and it might need to be done on a rewatch, where he doesn't actually say that he's going to choose Otto Hightower as his hand, just that he might just say, bring me Otto Hightower, you're not going to be the hand, you toad, or something to that effect. So it could be the case that he's just being held by Aemond to consolidate his power.
I think
Because-
he genuinely wants him to be his hand, though. I think Aemond sees, looks up to his grandfather a little bit,
I don't think he wants a hand.
Somewhat of the way he looks up to his uncle.
I don't think he wants a hand. I think he wants to be he wants to be a dictator.
He wants to have unlimited power.
Kind of, because he's basically got a very small council. So
I thought you were going to say something else.
But at least it still works. But yeah, no, it definitely looks to me like the clues are that he's consolidating his power, and he's completely gone rogue and ruthless. He has no regard whatsoever for, he's willing to kill his brother, or certainly willing to abuse him. He's got no regard whatsoever for Rhaenyra, and she's the nicest out of them. He took Alicent off the council, he's just discarded her. So just because you are family has no bearing on whether or not Aemond's loyal to you whatsoever. And so I think he's the bait and switch in a way. I think he's got, anyway, that's my prediction. Stamping that one in. Boom. Could be wrong.
Okay.
We'll see.
But
maybe this is not mentioned in Fire and Blood at all, as far as I remember.
So, yeah.
Otto being captive or anything.
But but that final montage, I loved how they embedded in all the different melodies from the different houses.
I've got, shout outs, and I was like, I wish I had a better understanding of music form to understand the progression of that music theme, because they had multiple leitmotifs, and I learned the term leitmotifs, and I'm just going to continue using them because I enjoy that as a term. Like character or plot themes rolling through. So they had, obviously, when the Lannisters were making the move, obviously that was the most obvious leitmotif. That's the the Reigns of Castamere. But they also had the kind of repeated oral notes. That's the Targaryen emotion tension. But it's the lull, it's like a sort of
that's Rhaenyra's theme. Yeah.
Rhaenyra's theme, and they also had the piano to start off. And again, I wish I had a better comprehension of music theory to really appreciate it. I really enjoyed it, but I felt like a dum-dum as I enjoyed it, because I felt like it was more complex than I was able to comprehend.
Knowing where it goes. Sorry, Max.
I was pissed that we only saw the Starks in the Greybeards for 5 seconds.
Yeah. Hopefully we get more of them next season. I mean, they've had a long war.
I need more Cregan Stark. We need Cregan Stark up in here.
More Helena, more Cregan.
I did see a deleted scene where Cregan Stark was actually going across the Twins with the Northmen. So it's the exact same scene that we saw the Northmen go over the Twins, but he was at the front of it. I don't know if they CGI'd him out or they just did 2 takes, one with him, one without, and they use whatever they want in post. Because I think some people were saying, it would be kind of silly if he literally actually led them out. Right, then maybe not, maybe, I don't know.
Sending the Greybeards was to send the Greybeards. He's got duty. A Stark must stay in Winterfell.
And I
Um,
like the fact that like they're not bringing horses with them, and that kind of lines in with the fact that, as I understand it, and I don't know if this is a change or whatever, that greybeards are sort of almost being sent to their death, so that it's one less mouth to
yeah.
feed at
Yeah,
home because they're
Well,
old, you
I'm
know.
also
exactly. Yeah.
assuming
Winter's
then
coming.
Mm,
like it's one less mouth to feed, and also like the Stark's comprehend or the North's comprehension of Valhalla.
mm,
It's better to go out fighting than to be like to go out in sickness or age.
yeah.
So yeah,
So that's kind of cool.
I
I do
enjoyed it.
like that. The twins in House of the Dragon look really cool. I love.
Like
Yeah,
another one of
that's
my
cool.
shout outs is just some of the like location shoots,
Mm-hmm.
not the interior, like the dragon view
Mm,
of the locations to get you
chef's
that
kiss.
sense of like all geography. Oh, so
Mm,
good. Like
yeah,
it's in one of my shout out notes. We've already talked about the
absolutely.
costumes.
Mm,
Like I really love the costumes in terms of the dragon armor, all the different dragon armor for the different
mm-hmm.
new riders was cool.
Yeah,
Um, like the armor for the Valerians was
love it.
cool. The we've already talked about the different colored beards. That was really
Mm-hmm.
nice. The costumes were very piratey, obviously, as well for that particular
Mm-hmm.
group. Also, the smocking on Rhaenyra's nightgown was amazing, and smocking is a skill, and I love it. Also, I like that they put her in like really warm-looking gowns. Like she looks like she's comfortable. I like it.
Yeah, yeah. It's a lot better than Brienne of Tarth's fucking bathrobe in season 8.
Well, that was designed to be as ugly as possible.
But it was just a bathrobe. Like,
Oh,
come
sorry, I thought you were
on.
talking about her pink dress from season one. No, you're talking about. Let's not talk about Game of Thrones season 8.
Sorry, Max. It's upsetting him. Um, one
Thank
scene
you.
we
Thank you for your consideration.
what one scene we haven't, I don't think we've covered it, is the Corlys and Alan scene.
No, we have not
Hmm.
yet.
Uh I like again the start, the rich blue costumes are just wonderful. But I I when I first watched this, I thought that was very soap opera-y, but on rewatch,
Um,
I think I kind of get it now.
I
Um,
guess it. I mean, like the way I would justify it, and again, I also even on rewatch, I was like, I skipped it on rewatch. I'll be entirely honest. I was a bit like,
mm,
I don't really have time to rewatch this scene. It's daddy issues.
mm,
I did. I got that we've been saying all the way through that this guy has no personality and is so
mm,
stoic and has no like emotional range. And so it was meant to be the bomb going off. It was meant to be the
mm,
final crack in the wall that broke down the dam, and then you get a big wave of daddy issues. And in all
mm,
fairness, not only is he having resentment from having daddy issues, he's also basically being treated like a rebound child.
mm,
Like Corliss has lost his children and he's lost his grandchildren, so now he's like, oh, we all do. And like
mm,
I can like from Alan's perspective, that's like a proper fuck you. Like that's
yeah,
a real like you don't even realize that you're doing it, and that's shitty. So
mm.
I get the emotional motivation, even though as I said, yeah, I did find it a bit too separate for me to really like give it too much credit.
It made it make sense.
Yeah.
And I it gives some sort of arc and development for when I assume Alan inherits the Driftwood throne, or becomes the
Well, I thought it was like a rebuttal to him not ever going to take the Driftwood throne. So it kind of, me, it was one of those things where Corliss has been like, it's okay, I have a backup. It's okay, I have a backup. Oh, even Baylor doesn't want to be my backup. I've lost my wife. Okay, I have my final backup. He will be my heir. I still have the most important thing up to this point has been the fact that I will have lineage. And then the final nail in the coffin is even his bastard is like, fuck you, Corlys. I don't want Driftmark. I don't want anything to do with you. And now Corlys is going into a life and death battle. And so I like, unless something changes during the combat, I wouldn't put this as like a nail in the coffin for him just being like, well, fuck it, I quit. Like, you know, that's how I read the scene. It's like him finally getting like, he's all of his life he's been like, oh yeah, Rhaenys, you should be queen, but also I'm not going to listen to you when you say the most important thing is family, and I'm going to fuck off and do my own thing, but I'm going to say it's for you, and I think it's for you, but actually if I really cared about you, maybe I'd spend more time at home. And then he loses her. And then all he cares about is family lineage, and then he was willing to like compromise and accept what are clearly bastards because he cared more about his family name than about his actual genetics. And then by the time he realizes he's got granddaughters, they don't care anymore. And then by the time he's finally reached out to his bastards, they don't care anymore. And so like his entire house of cards, his castle in the sand, is just being washed away. Like it could make him very fearsome in battle, or it could make him a liability.
See, this is interesting actually, because this, I suppose, and I don't know this off the top of my head, could this be the end of House Velaryon then? Could this be, you know, Alan's refusal to like take on the house be the, like you say, like it could just be, that could be it.
I mean, are there any heirs left? Unless I don't know what happens with Baylor and Rain. Like so far, they haven't seemed to get to the bedding. They haven't been married yet.
So in the book, in Fire and Blood, Vaemond, you know, the guy that Daemon cut his
the
head off.
brother / nephew. Is he nephew in the books and he's
Brother
brother
slash
in
nephew, yeah, he's a nephew or cousin or something in the book.
Yeah.
He has children that are still alive.
Okay.
All right, so there's still a name about. Okay.
By the time we get to Game of Thrones, there's no Valerians left, is there?
We
None in the story, at least. I don't think. I think they're. I don't know how they die out, but I think they do.
Targaryens are considered the last of old Valyria.
Yeah. Is like Driftmark is considered a, like, I'm just trying to think, like the Velaryons, like they're not, they're a bit like the Hightowers in that they're not like, is it vassal lords or whatever it is? They're not in charge of like a region. I mean, there's Driftmark and then there's Old Town, which they're not regions. They're more like, well, one's an island, one's a city, right? So like in terms of the political hierarchy, the Velaryons are quite, like, they're quite low down, but in terms of status, i.e. them being from Old Valyria plus Corlys making the house incredibly wealthy, kind of elevates their status, right?
And I think they like genetic history, they've married into the Targaryen dynasty more than once. I think.
Yeah. So they're obviously like, by marriage, they're obviously a very powerful and influential house. But that's
in
more
terms
like,
of own property, they don't really have land or holdings. They own authority over the ocean because they're great sailors, and they own great wealth because they're great sailors. They don't necessarily have like land holdings in the same way as other lords may.
Yeah.
They don't really have vassals. They have an armada.
Yeah, it's a little different, I guess. It's a little bit like is it Thunderbird 4? The underwater one. They're the Thunderbird 4. Wow, what a dated reference that is. Crikey.
The 60s when you reference back.
Wow. That's it. I don't know. I missed it. Good. I love the Thunderbirds.
I love Thunderbirds. Like, Max, do you have any comprehension?
No, I gotta say,
have you seen Team America?
I'm Googling right now. Oh yeah, of course.
So Team America is a parody of the old series like Thunderbirds and what's the one with the mermaids?
Oh, Captain Scarlet.
No, Captain Scarlet is one with the Immortal. There's one with the mermaids. It's like,
Yeah. That's Captain Scarlet. There's
No,
mermaids in Captain
they're
Scarlet.
separate series. They're separate series.
So what,
Uh,
like with like marionette, like little marionette
Yeah, little
puppets?
that's what I was,
marionettes with their like
yeah.
weird movements, and they go and save the world. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, also
Anyway,
another scene we
back
haven't
to Game of
we
Thrones. House of Dragon.
there's a lot to this. There's a lot to
There's
this
a
episode. It
All
lot
was
right,
going
Team
on in this
American
episode.
said.
Is this the longest podcast we've ever done?
no, we got one that's 3.5
No.
hours under our belt. The one scene that so it's Jace and Ulf and Hugh the Hammer.
I've got Jason the Bastard. Yeah,
Yeah,
sounds like a good
and
band.
Jason the Bastard. And obviously, this is probably one of the lesser interesting bits because this is clearly just a bit of story to acclimatize the Dragon Riders with the Targaryens a little bit. And I do know that actually I won't go into that particular spoiler, but you can see that Jace is a little bit at odds with the common folk learning to ride dragons because he feels like it delegitimizes himself as a Targaryen and the heir to the throne.
They made the subtext text.
Yes. And there's even a scene where they're having dinner and like Ulf's like, oh, let's have more of these little birds. And I love at the end of that scene where he's like, he just says birds. Like that's like all he's here for.
Well, I like the fact that he's willing to sass Rhaenyra back, and they don't quite have her a taunt because they've given them power. Like it's like I have just done a refresher on management training for all my work, and it is a very difficult circumstance to be in where you've granted someone you don't really think is suitable for a position of authority. And so what do you do if their behavior is a problem? Because you can't take the authority, you can't demote them, but you can't change personality. You can change actions, but you can't change personality. If you think someone's conduct is wrong, so they can say, learn to ride your dragons better, but they don't necessarily have the authority to be like, manners at the table, pretty please, thank you very much, without then giving them more power as bribery. And like I relate to the Rhaenyra, like, oh fuck, what have I done giving this person that would be perfect for the role in a position of authority, and now I've made my bed and I have to just sleep in it.
Well, this is the peril, and this is the consequences of the risky play that she's made with the dragons.
At least she owns it.
Yeah, so because we know Adam is legit, and we even establish as much that he's legit. Everything
I really
about his
enjoy
character.
that between the three bastards, they have very different personalities and very different motivations.
Yeah, I like Adam as a character. I wish we had more of him on screen, to be honest. I wish we had more of his character arc, especially because he is distinct from Alan. So they are, of course, they're brothers. They grew up poor together, and you got Alan, who is resentful of Corlys, and you got Adam, who seems to be he's very much the younger brother of this, in that he's fine with just validation. He's just happy to be there. Like he's looking for acceptance. He's just grateful that he's not, working the hard graft that he used to.
Wait, are you saying that there's a relationship between brothers in this show that has good metaphor and strife?
Exactly.
I've never seen that before in this program.
So I like, yeah. Well, we needed to replace Arik and Eric, didn't we?
Yeah.
And
he makes a very good replacement for Nettles, in all fairness, because one of the things I was thinking about since last week is Nettles actually, the role that she plays in terms of plot, from my understanding, is not that important, but she is a fan favourite. But the reason why she's a fan favourite, at least in part, is because she was one of the very, name it on your hand, named characters of colour in the original Game of Thrones book. books or in the Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire lore, at least by George R.R.'s description. And part of, at least in part, the reason why she was so important and well loved is because of that aspect of her characterization and her description. Now, again, I'm not going to speak for any communities that might particularly love her for other reasons. But the primary aspects of her character is she was a female black woman who was a dragon rider, who was lowborn. And so they covered a lot of loops with giving more representation to other characters. So I do understand the hurt in losing Nettles, but Rhaenyra does fulfill 2 out of 3 of those descriptions. The only thing that she's lacking is being lowborn.
I mean,
Can we talk about Rhaenyra in this
2 out of 3.
episode?
Well, is there anything to say about Rhaenyra? Sorry,
it was like you know that bit in Monty Python and the Holy Grail where the guards are like watching the them come in the distance running at them, and each time they cut back they're further away. It felt like that. Like
I literally,
come on,
I
get
will,
on with it.
I will read out my notes verbatim. Do Rhaenyra and Sheepstealer. Do.
Yeah. I like
That's
Sheepstealer. Looks good.
literally my note. I like the design, and I like the fact that if we're talking about, there's been a continuous follow through of, at least to an extent, the dragons' descriptions and personalities matching the descriptions and personalities of their riders. So Daemon is a weird, slightly freaky dude with a weird, slightly freaky dragon, and Rhaenyra, Maelys and Rhaenys, like the queen with the red queen, like there's good pairings. The one credit I'll give to that scene is like the unloved and neglected dragon. One who's been starved for affection and starved for care is found by the girl who is starved for affection and starved for care. And I will give credit for that. That is a nice little, like, sprinkling of sugar on what was basically a meh cake.
Yeah, and it didn't need to span out as much. Like, they could have done more with it. What would have, and maybe this is a budget constraint. I always sort of use the budget constraints to make excuses for dragons here, because it does seem that there's a lot there. But it would have been great if earlier on Rhaenyra had found Sheepstealer and there were a few scenes of her bonding with the dragon, and we could have used that as a mechanism to learn how, more long-term bonding of the dragon takes place or something like that.
Yeah.
Probably would have been quite
expensive. Yeah, we
expensive.
could have a proper how to train situation. And in comparison, like, Baylor and her characterization is so strong. Like, her scene with Jace was just, she like, every time she's on screen, I'm like, I am fully aware the likelihood of her actually becoming queen is 0. But every time she's on screen, I'm like, she is really smart and empathetic and understands the political understanding of the whole thing, and still is like, actually, I understand what's important right now. Like, the fact that she's like, you think it diminishes you? Well, what about me? Like, does it diminish me? No. Like, you are still the heir. You are still the most important person, and you sulking about it is not helping anything. I really love Baylor. I think Rhaenyra, hopefully she can get a personality at some point, like Alan.
Yeah. I think Baylor's like a great screen presence. The chemistry between her and Jace is really good as well. They actually seem like a really nice couple, to be honest. They seem like
really lovely. Yeah.
There's some good parallels. A little bit. Well, I'll be careful with the term good parallels, but there's a little bit of Corlys and Rhaenys energy.
I think Baylor's grown up with Rhaenys as an authority figure. And so having that understanding that relationships, even if they aren't perfect, should have equality or have communication is like a really nice thing for her to have seen, because she doesn't really see that from, and like she would have seen her mother and her father being loving as well. to a certain extent. So yeah, I like, she seems like a very well-adjusted character, which in this world is few and far between.
Remarkably well adjusted is
Remarkably well-adjusted.
yeah. So, but I kind of wish they did more with her, because I'd like to have seen her more on screen, and maybe I'd like to have seen her not be a sounding board for someone else's exposition. I feel like there's been very little, very little. Like, it would have been cool, like, considering the amount of time that Matt Smith got, like, cut some of that and give it to some of the more like
give it to the younger generation. Like,
yeah.
I really want to get to know, like, particularly because we had the age up as well with that casting. Like, we barely got to know them last season at all. We got, what, 2 episodes with them, maybe?
Something like that, yeah.
Like, so, like, it would have been good to have slightly more of the younger generation, but presumably the older generation will soon all die off, so...
Yeah. And I was expecting more of a jump forward as well, because the
timeline seemed very squiffy.
Yeah, as I understand it, could easily be wrong here, but it could be that season 3 is just basically wall-to-wall battles, and then there's a time jump for season 4. That would be sort of what as I understand it, might be going on, or there could be a big time jump halfway through season 3, a whole bunch of battles,
specifically, and then in this episode we had Tylen arriving, having his whole thing, and then presumably make his way back the next day, which obviously there's ship travel. We had specifically Rhaenyra say, we attack the strongholds in 2 days. And then it had Alicent arriving and saying, come to King's Landing in 3 days.
Yeah.
And so like, I don't know what the timeline is. Is this all happening in the course of like a fortnight?
Well,
the whole of season 2?
Season 2 began.
Season 2 is a couple months. Takes place over a couple months, I think.
It feels like it would take place a couple of months, yeah. But the beginning of season 2 was only a very short time after season 1.
Yeah, well, we were kind of saying it's about a fortnight.
Yeah, fortnight sounds about right, yeah. So I would imagine that the beginning of season 3 is basically going to be pretty soon after where season 2 left off. Like, it's going to be pretty continual, I think.
I don't see a natural place for them to put a time jump anytime soon, except for the fact that they're gonna have to age up Rhaenyra and Daemon's kids eventually. So they're gonna have to invent.
Well, that's an eventual reason.
It might just come halfway through a season for all we know.
Yeah.
Right, have we explored all the scenes?
I've got a couple of quick ones. I think it's mostly just highlighting stuff that have already come to pass. So, Mysaria seems to be on the, like, you've been blessed by the gods train. She didn't seem to be kind of on it last episode, where Rhaenyra was like, oh my gosh, I've been blessed by the gods that we have managed to find these riders, and Mysaria was like, I'm just gonna hover in the background. And this episode she was like, yeah, you've been blessed by the gods. So that, like, I don't know how much of that I really, for some reason, I just don't trust her at all. So I don't know whether or not that is genuine, like she's come round on the idea, or whether or not she is cottoned on to that's what Rhaenyra wants to hear, so that's what she's feeding back to her. There was also a shot where Rhaenyra says, who will pay the price, and then it panned back onto the bastards riding their dragons, which has gone into my theory that hopefully, like, part of the intention is to use the bastards as fodder against Vhagar, and if they die, they die. Which she needs to explain to Jace, because there was a whole scene where she chose Adam to come with her to Harrenhal instead of Jace. And so Jace's jealousy is being exacerbated. Instead of saying, hey, Jace, part of the reason why I'm bringing the bastards is because if they die, then, you know.
That's totally like you don't bring the heir with you on the like if both of you get shot out of the sky.
The queen and the heir should not go together.
Like
Like,
in real life, the royal family do not fly on the airplane together. They have separate airplanes for just that reason as well.
exactly. But she needs to just have
The
that
captain and first
conversation.
officer, like to make a Star Trek analogy, Picard and
Yeah.
Riker don't go on a mission together and win a
Exactly.
mission
Yeah.
together, you know.
She needs to just have that conversation with Jace and say, this is why, because otherwise he's thinking that she's favoring him, which is not really the case. But it's just so Jace can get drama, but it's just one of those things. For the Aegon escape, I just made a couple of notes where the specific wording that Larys uses, like the true king returning from the ashes and all of those sort of things, sounded very much like Viserys, as in brother to Dany Viserys.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, when we arrive back in King's Landing, you and me will be praised as the returning king, and all of those sort of things. And it again plays into the theme of like, what are the stories that we tell to ourselves? What will the books remember? What will the stories remember? And like, it had Aegon also saying, he will be the realm's delight, which was obviously Rhaenyra's title.
Yeah.
Which, part of it I think was obviously, self-deprecation. Also, part of it was like, what story shall we tell for ourselves that we are the realm's delight? I also enjoyed the fact that he said, "Why must I run? I'm a king. Why must I run?" And that was like talking about physically moving, like walking, running. But then obviously he runs away at the end. And
delivery on that was amazing though. And also when Larys was like, yeah, because your brother's going to kill you, like his reaction to that was just like, oh, well, yeah, I guess you got me there.
Yeah, you got me there. It's going to happen. And the last point on my notes is I really liked the shot of Rhaenyra through the bookcase in the diamond crisscross during the montage, because A, it looked like she was, looking through the walls of a prison, and B, that is a bunch of scrolls and scrolls of history, and it goes into the metaphor of the episode about it being like memoried histories, like she's now being pigeonholed, literally, into an arc of history, and how will history remember her now she's made the decision she has. And I just, honestly, every frame of painting, like the visuals in this episode,
loved them.
Awesome, and that was one of my favourite visuals.
Yeah.
And that's the end of my notes.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to what I said at the beginning. It's like if this had been, a non-finale episode, to be honest, would have kind of loved it. Really, I mean, I know that it sort of drags out stuff that was already dragged out, but all that kind of stuff was part of it.
I will defend this season in that I'd rather have slow, drawn out, well-written character arcs than what we had at the tail end of Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
that would be my primary defense of this season, which is admittedly slow.
I'm okay with it. It's just waiting for 2 years. If season 3 sticks the landing, all is forgiven. But 2 years, and I hope Duncan Egg's good too.
Is sad. I hope so too.
What about you, Max? Do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I thought, during at the beginning of the season or like a couple episodes in, I thought this could match the first season or maybe even be better. But I definitely see that there's a clear drop off in quality in the season. I think it has to do with production issues and the writer's strike or something. So I'm really hoping that they can move past all that, and because it's not like it wasn't bad by any means. It's just didn't live up to the standard that I thought that it should. I think they can totally get it back on track for season 3. So I'm still excited to see what they do.
There is something about this season that felt like it might have been hindered by things that we're not aware of. Maybe I know that HBO was slashing budgets. Maybe that had something to do with it. Writer's strike might have had something to do with it. It might be like knock-on effects from the writer's strike. The writer's strike might have caused a delay here, which might have caused some sort of, it's a whole industry, that we're not privy to. So maybe it could be the case. And also the thing is with HBO, right? They're kind of struggling for property, intellectual properties right now. Like they should be throwing everything at House of the Dragon because, like, what else have they really got? Um,
I kind of, the
Yeah.
way I'm translating it is it's kind of season 1 to season 2 are almost different medias. In that season 1 feels like a prologue. You have you have character jumps. You have really like so many years pass in season 1. Season 1 covers what, 16 years at least, 17 years. If we're saying that Jace is old enough to be
We've
like
got
17,
like 20 years.
18.
Like it's
Yeah,
like
if he, like from like just going from the age of the now grown adults. Like if we say that Jace is 20 years old, and we say that Rhaenyra was like 17, 18, like she was 15 when she, so like if we're saying like that's been a long time, like that's a lot of time to travel. So it felt like a kind of prologue. It felt like almost a cold open to the story of the House of the Dragon. While this felt like the first true chapter, which admittedly was slower. But if you're comparing what we're saying, 3-month character piece versus a 25-year setup, like it's going to feel different. And I didn't hate the change. There was plenty of stuff to nibble on, but I do feel again, and I stop saying that I prefer it being slow and well thought out than being scrambled to get it finished.
I mean,
I really that will be my primary forgiveness for this series. Is that, like, I'd rather have a lot of scenes of Daemon hallucinating than him immediately just being like, oh yeah, I'm just going to give up on my 40 years of life, deciding that I wanted to be king and let Rhaenyra be queen. Sure, whatever.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I felt disconnected me from season 1 was the time jumps. Like I felt like there was so much change in between the characters over time that I felt like it was you're not I didn't feel like I was connecting with them in the same way that I was with characters in Game of Thrones, and I think this does remedy it. And it also does have the levity that is nice that I was hoping to bring back. So I gotta be honest, like I actually kind of like season 2 over season 1, just because it feels like the story does feel like it flows a little better. But yeah, it's just the blue balls. That's the vast majority of it for me.
Yeah, it's just I guess the left of that.
There's such different.
I'm gonna go back and
I need
rewatch
the
this
distance
season
to get an idea. Yeah, I think I need a rewatch.
Cool. All right, should we wrap it up?
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. All right. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you for watching / listening.
Leave your comments. There were some good comments last week about Nettles. Some were in favor. Some were fine with the cut. Some didn't agree with the cut. But it's yeah.
Oh, I did get sent a personal DM from someone who had just watched the whole of season 1 and the whole of season 2, who was wondering why Otto came back to being the Hand after Rhaenyra basically got him fired in season 1. And I think the answer to that is because she left court. She basically was like, fuck it, it's too hot here, I'm like too much stress, I'm going away to Dragonstone. And so while she was off, Alicent used her influence to get her dad back in power. Like, that's the answer to that one.
Cool. All right. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll see you in 2 years or whenever we do another thing. All right.
We've got to do Dunkin'
next year for Dunkin' Egg.
Yeah, Dunkin' Egg. Oh, I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, I got Polish. I've got Night of the Seven Kingdoms up there, so I'm going to give that a reread. And yeah, nice. Cool. All right. Toodaloo, everybody.
Okie doke.
Bye.
Bye.